Want some tips and insights on dealing with Chinese business partners? Today, you're in for a treat. Global from Asia, episode 78.
Welcome to the Global from Asia podcast, where the daunting process of running an international business from Hong Kong is broken down into straight-up, actionable advice. And now, your host, Michael Michelini.
I hope everybody's having an amazing Tuesday morning. Life is really amazing, and we should all be thankful that the opportunity we have to live in today's world and make a difference. It's kind of reviews I got on iTunes below that get me in this amazing mood. Let's read it off. 5-star from Shenzhen James in the United States, titled, "Wow, learned a lot." And he said he stumbled upon this podcast from a Facebook posting, and it's inspired him to move to China. That's pretty amazing there, James. So glad that happened, and let's keep making things happen. Welcome to China. So I've been building up my official WeChat channel, my service account, and man, it's been really reaching a lot of people here. And this podcast is also there, syndicated. So if you want to listen on WeChat, maybe iTunes is blocked in China or not working so fast, you could also use WeChat. You can search my name, Michelini, or I'll put the QR code there. But do that big push. I'm getting some people asking to do phone calls about WeChat, how to set up the accounts. You can listen to the episode 73 with Brent Deverman where we talked about WeChat marketing. But those that even listen to that want even more insights. And some of my friends and listeners have been suggesting I should make a little bit of money from this help. So I'm going to do a $10 1-hour call for call in, and we'll do a group talk about WeChat marketing on Tuesday, April 16th at 9 p.m. Hong Kong time. And it'll be all about WeChat for business, since there's so many different questions and it's changing so fast. I did it at this time to try to make up for the webinar that was at the middle of the night for the European listeners. So we'll try 9 p.m. Hong Kong time, April 16th. If you want to check out more info, go to globalfromasia.com/call. Okay, and now for this week's show, we have Winston, the first China video blogger, famously known under the username SerpentZA. And I've watched a bunch of his videos over the years, and it's always entertaining and informative. And also, I've met people who have moved to China based on his YouTube series. So just like James in the beginning of the show with his review, podcast helped him move to China. I know for a fact I've met people that Winston has influenced to move to China. So we are honored to get him on to the show today. Actually, I also listened to his show interview on Limitless Laowai, where we'll link in the show notes too if you're interested in listening there. And I thought it would be amazing to talk more about his China business partner experiences and hiccups and learning lessons that he mentioned briefly on that show, and focus the whole show today about that. So we're going to get some tips and advice when seeking out business partners for your business. So let's get into it. Okay, thank you everybody for tuning in to another Global from Asia podcast. We have with us a special guest. Some of you might know him as Winston, others SerpentZA on YouTube. And I'm really happy. I've watched some of your YouTube videos over the years, and I'm still personally shy on camera, but I got to learn from you. Microphone's enough for me, but thanks for being here, Winston. And can you introduce yourself for everybody?
Yeah, sure. Well, it's a pleasure to be here, first of all. My name is Winston. As you mentioned, SerpentZA is what I'm more well known as. And I'm basically just a mainland China vlogger.
Cool. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure if anybody searched on YouTube about China, they probably bumped into one of your videos. How many do you have on there now?
Oh, I've got around about 530 videos at the moment.
Amazing. Yeah. And we thank you for inviting me. You just were interviewed on China Radio International here in Shenzhen. So that was a great one. Do you want to maybe give people a little bit of idea what happened when there?
Sure. Well, I got contacted by China Radio International. They're doing a special series of documentaries on, prominent South Africans living in China. And as you might know, I am a British South African. So, I grew up in South Africa. I was born there, although my parents are British. So my name came up, and they flew down from Beijing to come and interview me and follow me around for 3 days. And they're putting together a little documentary, which should be up in about 3 weeks or so. Anyway, it's a very interesting opportunity. And I thought, they're coming to film what I do. They wanted to film me making YouTube videos and film my work and my motorcycle company. And I thought at the last minute, well, it would be quite interesting if I had a subscriber meet, which I like to have every once in a while. Thought I'd have a subscriber meet and they could come along and meet some of the subscribers, and see firsthand that the videos do actually reach people. So I just put out an invitation on my WeChat and on Weibo and YouTube the day before. And then, a whole bunch of people pitched up, which was fantastic. And it was a really nice turnout. You were there. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
and,
it was cool.
Yeah, and we all got to go out later and have a big dinner and beers together. So it was actually quite a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm glad you do that and help build a community here and help each other out. There's people that had some questions and you were helping them with some answers. So that's amazing. Thanks for that.
Yeah, no worries.
Sure. So, I know I like your tagline. It's like China adventures, bikes, and beer, which is it's a pretty cool topic. I'm more, focusing on the business side. I'm sure we can link to your videos, and you have some pretty awesome videos on your bike and some of your adventures. But I'm thinking today we can talk about some experiences and tips on Chinese business partners that you've been through and that people can learn from. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, and it's definitely something worth discussing. It's business works very differently here than the rest of the world.
Sure. So like you mentioned, your Churchill motorcycle customs. That's something that you're doing now. Maybe we'll first start a little bit earlier. So you've been here longer than me. 8 years, 9 years.
9 years.
9 years. Cool. And I think we're both similar in some points. Like I learned by doing, and I think you just came out here too. So and learned by doing. So maybe give us some ideas in your early days coming here and doing business. Sure.
Well, as I'm sure doing business in China the correct way through the right channels is very difficult. And if you want to start a business, there are all kinds of rules in place that prevent foreigners from actually starting businesses here. You do need a Chinese partner, for instance, and a whole bunch of licenses. And, it's a real nightmare. And I found that basically to do business in China is you should just do it, really. Start a business and then see how it goes. And if you become successful, then get all the paperwork and stuff sorted out later. It really does seem to be the way to get things done around here.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, it's not. I think just for the audience, there are ways to do business in China without local partners. But yeah, like you said, it's a lot of paperwork and some overhead. So yeah, I kind of agree to first just do it and get started and learn on the ground. I think a lot of times people try to study. Like listening to this podcast or watching your YouTube videos to try to figure out how to do business here and live here. But obviously the best way is just to get out here and spend some time, right?
So. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I never would like to, I'm not trying to encourage people to do anything illegal or anything like that. That's not what I'm trying to get at here. It's just that the system is very flawed. Here in China, and although it's got a good idea behind it, it doesn't actually work. And I've made the mistake before of trying to follow the correct procedures to get a business going, and it ended up costing me a lot of money, and it was a failure, and it was impossible to get it off the ground because all of my capital, which should have been invested in the business itself, went into all these ridiculous, procedures that you have to follow through, and then you have to meet with the right kind of local government people, and then you have to take them out for dinner, and it's kind of like a guanxi, expensive bottles of cognac and useless meetings which waste time and money, and at the end of the day you've wasted your capital and you can't get started. And I've had other situations where you start something, you have the idea, you put it forward, you actually go ahead and begin what you want to do, and then you get the interest of a local Chinese person who says, wow, that's a good idea. I want to partner up with you, and let's get this off the ground properly, and let's get all the licensing and so on and so on. So, doing it that way seems to be better than trying to first put your idea forward and, go through all that sort of channel.
Sure. I don't want to pry too much, but maybe I'd love to hear some of your stories, those early days.
Sure. Well, I learned the hard way that when you're in China dealing with local Chinese businessmen and Chinese partners, that being a foreigner puts you at a big disadvantage, and that you will always, and I mean always, be second to other Chinese business interests. So I'm trying to think of the correct way to word this, but let's just say hypothetically you have this situation. You have a product, and you are dealing with a middleman, and you are busy. This middleman deals. Well, you're helping I should say I'm the middleman. Okay, I am the guy who is providing the clients for a factory here. Okay, I'm the sourcing agent. So I have clients in my country, and they find me, and they're looking for a product which I help them to develop, or I help them to find exactly what they're looking for, and I do all of the negotiations, and I do everything that's necessary to open up a channel between two countries, for instance. Well, inevitably you will find out that the orders stop coming in, and communication breaks down on both sides, and you wonder what's going on until you find out that the factories are now dealing directly with your client, or vice versa. Yeah. So, this happens a lot, which is very unscrupulous. Yeah.
Yeah, I've mentioned on the show a couple of my experiences, but yeah, a lot of times people back in our home countries don't realize the amount of work that we have done and on the ground, the investments. So sometimes it's, I think we can also pick on the Chinese about it, but I also sometimes put some of the blame on the buyer side, thinking that we shouldn't be in the middle, or we aren't necessary anymore. I've had it where a company would send samples to the factory trying to cut me out, and they didn't know that I was at the factory when the package arrived of their sample.
Yeah.
So, I think it's, I think we can also kind of blame the buyer too a little bit, but
one thing that I must mention, since we're on this topic, is you've always got to watch out for your supply chain, because the way it works in China is there's this sort of shifting of the blame. So if you set up a deal, like I once had this whole setup where I went to factories to source some solar-powered cell phone chargers, right? And I took a look at the products, and the products were fantastic, and they seemed great. And after testing and making sure that they were the right thing, we went ahead and placed a big order for a company back home. And so then everything seemed fine. The boxes arrived. There was like 5 boxes of these things arrived. However, what transpired was that the samples that I tested at the factory were just sort of not the same. They'd replaced the batteries inside. So the batteries in the samples that I tested were great, because I actually took testing equipment to make sure they could handle a load and that they were in good condition. But the ones that arrived back home actually had inferior secondhand, refurbished batteries inside, and they just didn't last. And when I brought this up with the supplier and complained, they just had an excuse that, it's not their fault. It's another factory's fault. It's another, down the supply chain, try to move it along. And it was incredibly frustrating, and a lot of money was lost.
Yep. I think we should meet up and have beers and cry to each other about these, because I've had this similar situations. And of course, they're already paid up front, right? They'll never...
Correct.
And it's always by bank transfer. There's no credit card chargebacks or anything. So they know that you can't get the money back.
Yeah, there are so many pitfalls, and I mean we're talking mainly about trade here and moving products across, but there are so many pitfalls, and there is a tendency in China for people to try and make a quick buck and just get some money now. They don't worry about the future, and they're not really interested in future business. This isn't always the case, but it's fairly large.
Sure.
Anyway, there is something I'd like to. You mentioned Chinese business partners, and I do have a story I'd like to share with you.
Yeah, I would love. I'm open ears here.
Okay. Well, I got burned fairly badly many years ago. When I first got to China, after my initial baptism of fire, as you could say, where I ran out of money and ended up on the streets and really didn't really know what was going on. I'd met this guy. His name was Eddie, and he was a really good friend of mine. And we sort of lived together in this slum area of Shenzhen. I stayed on the floor in his apartment with another bloke, and we went through some really hard times together, him and I. So we formed a pretty good bond, a good relationship, a good friendship. And once I was back on my feet, finally, I decided that I would start some kind of a business, because now my friend Eddie could speak English really well. And, he was a decent bloke, at least I thought so. So I basically started a business where I would help people who were coming to China in order to source products. And, for whatever reason, really, any foreigners coming to China, if they needed a translator or they needed to go and source products, I'd get my friend Eddie to accompany them. So I'd go meet the clients at the airport, bring them into China from Hong Kong, get them into their hotel, set them all up, and then the next day I'd introduce them to Eddie, and Eddie would take them to the suppliers and go and find what they needed to find, and wining and dining and entertainment and stuff. He would basically look after them if they needed anything. So I set him up. I got him a suit, got him all sorted out, business cards, the whole works. And we were in a partnership, right?
Yep.
Basically, and the business started to take off. We had a couple of clients. And, then the business just seemed to fail because we never had any repeat clients. And I was wondering what was going on. And then one day I was sitting in a bar in Shenzhen, and one of my clients was there with Eddie. And he'd been, basically just stealing all of the clients and keeping them as his own personal clients, and they'd been coming back, and he'd been looking after them and all this, without my knowledge. And it taught me a real harsh lesson at that point, because this is a guy that I thought I had a really close bond with. This was a really good friend of mine. And the fact that the crazy thing is, like, probably a week before that, he'd actually come to my birthday to celebrate my birthday with me, and with all smiles and everything's cool. And, and then the next week I saw he was there. Actually, he'd been stealing my clients, which was a big knock to me. So, yeah, I think something you have to learn as a foreigner, at least when dealing with local people, it seems like the friendships are fine, but when it comes to business, I think that they can be, in general, fairly cutthroat, and they'll always put business before friendship. That's basically in my own experience.
Yeah, I have to say I'm actually kind of in a situation currently it's not a full-on business, but it's kind of like a project, and it's becoming somewhat more of a business. And yeah, like, it seems like when it becomes friendship turns into business. I mean, I think that's kind of, in a way, true anywhere in the world. But I think we have to highlight China, that things do change. And then they start to weigh up, like, what's the value? Because they're all Chinese, so they feel like, what's the value of a foreigner after, like, they get the customer, right? They feel like we're just like he was treating you like a lead generation, right? You were bringing in the lead. And I guess I hope I'm not picking any scabs here, but I guess he felt that you once he had the customer, there was no more value that you could add in the transaction. So I think China's all about. I guess the culture is way about, like, cutting out the middleman and increasing margins, to make as much profit that they can. I think it's just maybe in the culture, and I think they do it to themselves too. I think it's not only to foreigners. In a way, I think that sometimes that's why Chinese sometimes do business with foreigners more trustworthy, in a trusting way, because they don't expect the foreigners to be as cutthroat to them as Chinese to Chinese. So, I just try to put a little bit of perspective on the situation. I think that the Chinese will also do it to their own too in situations. It's really a sad situation, but it's a common one, honestly. I think you have to try to figure out in your business to control the customer, control, like you said earlier, about the supply chain or the flow or the cash flow or the product flow or some the communication flow. But yeah, this is I think it's a really good lesson to people listening.
I think it's incredibly important for you to build in some kind of fail-safes into your dealings. In other words, make sure that your clients do not get your suppliers' contact details, for instance, or have some kind of an exclusive agreement with them. Or in my case with Eddie, is I should never have allowed him to interact directly with the clients. I should have actually just spoken to him and asked him to find out information for me, which I could relay on to the clients. That would have been the only way to prevent that situation from happening. Yeah. And, there's something that we should actually mention here, and I'm sure you've come across this before, but in China, there's actually a saying, which is 能骗就骗, which means if you can cheat, then cheat. Have you ever come across this idiom before?
Sadly, my Chinese level isn't so good, but I think in culture, I think I've had that taught to me in English in experiences. Wow. Yeah.
It's very, very, how can I say, you can see it very clearly when you, for instance, shop in a market, right? You go to a place like Dongmen, for instance, and you try to buy a T-shirt, they'll give you a price of like 100 RMB as the first starting price. And they're expecting you to bargain, right? But they throw that number out there, and if you accept that number, then they win, and they feel happy about it, right? But if you say to them, 100 RMB, are you crazy? I'll give you like 20, and then they say, how about 25? And then you say, no, I'll give you 20, and then you walk away. They say, okay, come back, you can have it for 20. It's part of the culture, so I think you have to be careful of that. People don't actually feel remorse when they cheat you.
Yeah, I think. I think it's like oh man, I might sound bad, but like conscious, or like you shouldn't feel guilty if you can steal something or take something. Like it's not a problem unless you're caught. Like if you can do something and not get caught, it's like not bad. I think.
In fact, it's good for them. It's good if you can, then you win. So if you manage to charge someone a high price for a product, that means you're just smarter than them, or that you're just lucky or something like that. So it doesn't even have a negative connotation here. It's more positive. If you manage to cheat someone, then, you've won up them, and it's a good thing, and it's something to brag about, So I think that's what you have to be very careful of when dealing with in China when it comes to business.
Yeah. So I hope it's getting better, but I feel like we still have to tell these stories. I mean, there's a lot of different generations of Chinese, right? So I think would you want to think that younger Chinese, like more westernized Chinese, are different, or I mean?
Oh, sure. There's a huge difference in generation, but don't forget, the way the Chinese family unit works is it's the grandparents that are actually raising the children. So a lot of the older ideals and older thoughts are sort of embedded in the child's psyche at a young age. So it takes a long time for old thinking to get weeded out.
True.
Basically, it boils down to this. I have so many times seen tourists here in Shenzhen or in China in general. They go up to a shop, and the shop owner will tell them that this costs whatever, and it's an exorbitantly high price, but because it's still cheaper than, say, in America, because whatever they're buying is a knockoff or whatever it is, they think, oh, okay, no problem, not a bad price, and they buy it anyway. And you see this, and then, the customer kind of seems happy, and the seller is ecstatic because they've just made 500% profit or whatever. And so it's almost seen like in business here in China, they're always trying that. It's all about bargaining in this culture. So you're not going to get away from that. You just have to be prepared, because we're, as foreigners, usually a little shy. If we go into a shop, we don't want to bargain. We feel uncomfortable bargaining, a lot of us. And we have to overcome that barrier if we're going to be doing business with Chinese people. You have to bargain. You have to say, that's not good enough. Give it to me cheaper, And, websites like Taobao are fantastic because now if I ever need to go buy something in the shops anywhere here, I look it up on Taobao and I see, it's going for 600 RMB. So when I go into the shop and they try to charge me 1,000, I will show them the Taobao link on my phone and say, look, it's 600 here. Give it to me for 600 or I'm out of here,
Yep. Yeah, the internet is finally catching up with the e-commerce is actually probably even better now in China than in the West. I order something, I get it the next day. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's great.
So, I feel a little bit, let's try to get a little bit more positive. How about,
yeah, sure. I know. It has been a very negative conversation so far.
I'm sorry.
No worries. We were talking about the pitfalls.
Yeah,
right?
sure. I mean, of course, I think these hard talks are, the listeners today should be very appreciative for. I mean, this is the stuff that hopefully will save them a lot of the pain that you and I have been through. So yeah, definitely. But I think things seem to be picking up for you and business. Maybe do you want to talk about Churchill Customs a bit and that stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's the other side to China is that there is a lot of opportunity in China. And once you know the market and once you know how things work here, then you really can make a business work. And with Churchill Customs, it's very simple. I took a hobby of mine, which was fixing up and building old motorcycles into something that looked nice and cool. And it's something I was doing on the side of the road just downstairs from my apartment. And, I met these other guys through my YouTube channel, Seamilk and Marty the Dumpling Schmidt. And the three of us decided that we all kind of shared the same passion, which was motorcycles, and that we should open a shop. So we did, and we got enough attention, and a lot of people saw what we were doing, and we got a Chinese partner came to help us out and get all the licensing, etc. done. And he's just a silent partner who is sitting on the sidelines and letting us do pretty much everything that we need to do. He's very happy, and he's also a bit of a bike enthusiast himself. So things have really grown into quite a fantastic little thing. It's really just a hobby turned into a small business. And it's such a wonderful place for me to go on Monday and Tuesday, because I go there every Monday and Tuesday. It's kind of like friends hanging out in the shop. We do a lot of work, but at the same time we're messing around, and we have a YouTube channel about the shop as well. All the antics that we get up to, and it's really rewarding because we get to actually make bikes that we send out all over the country. And in fact, we're just finishing a bike that's going up to Shanghai in a week or two, which is quite cool. And we got bikes up in Dongbei and all over Guangdong and various other places.
Awesome. Great. And yeah, we'll link that up on the show notes too, so people can check out your channel. And
yes.
So I'm happy for you. I'm really, yeah, I think that's the thing about China, right? Is just stick with it. I don't want to be negative with people. You're probably going to make some mistakes and lose some money, but I think to win, you just keep on being positive and keep going forward, right? So.
Sure. I think that people can learn a lot by listening to these conversations like what we're having now, because when I started business here, I was very naive, very trusting, because we have a very, when you do business in the West, we usually have a very sort of strict code of good business practice that we all follow. And that does not apply in China. So you have to be very careful, and you have to be very guarded, and you can't trust people as much as you usually would, I'd say. But at the same time, you can build very good business relationships with your Chinese suppliers and partners. And I will give you one example, actually. I got contacted, actually, by an old client of mine in South Africa who's looking to buy some kind of sort of fish pond pumps or something like that, right? And they asked me to look it up. So I contacted the company because it's a Shenzhen-based factory. I sent them an email and spoke to them and asked them if these pumps were for sale. And they got back to me and told me that, yes, they're for sale, but they already have an official distributor in South Africa. So I spoke to my clients and told them, look, there's an official distributor there.
Yep.
And my client said, well, no, the official distributor has closed down and we can't get them here anymore. So I spoke to the factory again and said, look, this client of mine is saying that the distributors actually closed down and, these pumps, they can't buy them anymore. And then, to my surprise, a couple of minutes later, I actually got a phone call from the distributor in South Africa asking me what was going on and who said that they'd been shut down. So this distributor had such a good relationship with the factory that the factory straight away contacted them and alerted them that there was somebody trying to undersell them or, try to sideline them. And of course, it wasn't my fault. I had no idea that the client of mine was being dishonest. But, as it turned out, they were, and that the pumps were actually still being sold. They were just trying to get a better deal. So, having a good, solid relationship with a factory, for instance, does pay off in the long run sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's true, right? Guanxi can go in your favor too, right? If you stick with it, right, with those Chinese suppliers or partners. So it's a long time. It takes time.
It is something you have to keep working on it. So it means lots of dinners and lots of baijiu and all that nonsense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll have some baijiu later on.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Cool. Well, thanks so much, Winston. I think we really had a great conversation here, and I think people are gonna learn a lot. Of course, there's a YouTube channel which we'll link. How can people reach out to you and your business if they want to? Well,
the absolute best way would be to basically take a look at the YouTube channel, leave a comment. We have a Facebook page both for Churchill Customs and for my own personal YouTube channel, and they're all kind of interlinked, so it's pretty easy to find one from the other. Okay. So I think probably best bet would just be to go to my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/SerpentZA.
Okay.
Yeah, from there. And I'd like to also say, although we've been saying a lot of negative things here, overall, in general, doing business in China is definitely full of opportunity, and it can be incredibly positive and quite an adventure. So don't give up. Just be careful.
Yeah. I think it's. I remember one of your other talks. It's just staying positive, right? I mean,
sure.
We all know those expats that are burnt out and they don't get back up on the bike, right? They fall off and they don't get back on, and they just stay. Sure. They stay in China and they complain about everything. So I don't try not to become one of those people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The good still far outweighs the bad here.
Yep. All right. Thanks, Winston. I'm sure people will enjoy, and maybe we'll get you back on in the future. So thanks again.
Fantastic. So nice to talk to you, Michael, and good luck with everything you're doing.
Okay. Thank you, Winston, for coming on the show. He and I were a little bit worried that we're a little bit negative on China business partner horror stories, but I think it's this kind of advice that is really invaluable, and it's much better than learning it on your own, making mistakes. I think it's kind of like a game, a little bit like positioning, not to be seen as a middleman, not adding value. You want to always look like you're adding value, or you should be adding value. It's very cutthroat, and it's not just about foreigners versus Chinese. I think it's just China business in general. I get a lot of it. This is what I've learned over the years. So I hope this helps and maybe saves you a lot of headaches or money in the long term. So that's all that I have this week. Just a little bit of a mention for my micro call idea here. It's going to be only $10 for this kind of test first time run, which is a private call with a few of us on the WeChat marketing. So if you're interested or you want to check out more info, you can go on to globalfromAsia.com/call, CALL. All right, everybody, have a great week, and we'll talk soon.
To get more info about running an international business via Hong Kong, please visit our website at www.globalfromasia.com. That's www.globalfromasia.com. Also, be sure to subscribe to our iTunes feed. Thanks for tuning in.